Every year, Open Doors publishes the World Watch List, a list of the 50 countries where Christians face the most severe persecution. More than 340 million Christians face severe persecution or discrimination around the world because of their faith. The persecution against Christians is exploding, so much so that it overflows from the list. There is no more room in the ranking for all of the countries in yellow, that is, strong persecution. Only the countries in orange, very strong persecution, and red, extreme persecution, remain. The number of Christians killed for their faith increased by 60% between 2020 and 2021, from 2,983 to 4,761. The COVID-19 crisis has amplified the discrimination suffered by Christian communities persecuted because of their faith. This is particularly the case in Asia. The countries with the greatest increase in persecution are Colombia, Turkey, Iraq, and Nigeria. In Colombia, where violence against Christians has declined somewhat, there has been an increase in general hostility from guerrillas, paramilitary groups, and drug cartels. They want to intimidate Christians into silence, especially in regions where elections are held. In Turkey, last year, 2 Christians were killed and several attacks on Christians and churches were reported. The government has arrested several Christians and continues to ban Christian expatriates from returning to the country. The decision to transform the Hagia Sophia into a mosque has sparked much concern and misunderstanding in the historic Christian communities across the country. In Iraq, church closures have increased, as have the number of Christians abducted, threatened, sexually harassed, or killed. Although many Christian families have been able to return to their homes after being evicted by the Islamic State group, Christians continue to leave Iraq because of the lack of security and prospects for the future. Finally, in Nigeria, attacks against Christians continue to increase. Islamic extremists like Boko Haram and Fulani extremists, who have taken up arms, continue their massacres in Christian villages. Violence is spreading from the north, increasingly impacting the lives of Christians in the south of the country. 4 new countries are making their entry into the 2021 World Watch List: Comoros, Mozambique, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Mexico. In these countries, pressure against Christians has increased dramatically. In Comoros, the government has declared that there cannot be freedom of religion for its citizens. Any Christian who expresses his faith publicly can be sentenced to up to 1 year in prison. In Mozambique, security of Christians has deteriorated greatly. The Al-Sunnah wal Jamaa group, allied with the Islamic State, wants to establish a caliphate. They have attacked schools and churches, forcing tens of thousands to flee north. Christians also face persecution by drug cartels. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, violence and anarchy prevail in several parts of the country. Jihadists and other armed groups are spreading terror, and Christians are particularly targeted. These groups try to influence the sermons in churches and do not hesitate to kidnap pastors. The government also imposes restrictions on Christian communities. Finally, in Mexico, the growing pressure on Christians is largely due to organized crime. The mafias have taken advantage of the COVID-19 crisis to establish and extend their influence. Tribal leaders have also used the pandemic as a pretext to force Christians to participate in local religious rites. Here are the 5 countries where the situation for Christians is the worst in the world. They are at the top of the 2021 World Watch List. Number 5, Pakistan. Personal attacks and attacks against churches, blasphemy law, society adhering to radical Islam. Living as a Christian in Pakistan is extremely dangerous. For years, the figures for violence in this country have been the worst. Christians are regularly attacked and murdered, and the anti-blasphemy law continues to claim victims. Anyone accused of insulting Islam or its prophet can be sentenced to death. The mere mention of abolishing this law carries the risk of being killed. Number 4, Libya. Violence against Christians has further increased in this anarchy-ridden country. The collapse of the state in Libya leaves Christians vulnerable to hostility and attacks from Islamic extremists, and even from their own families. Number 3, Somalia. Anyone suspected of being a Christian in Somalia is in danger of death. The Islamic extremist group Al-Shabaab has a stated goal of annihilating all Christians in the country. Conversion to the Christian faith is seen as a betrayal of the family and the tribe. If a Somali is suspected of having become a Christian, he is harassed, threatened, or even killed by members of his own family or the chiefs of his tribe. All church life is impossible, and the state's influence is non-existent in many parts of the country. Number 2. Afghanistan. The Taliban are extending their influence in Afghanistan, and the Islamic State, although in decline, continues to persecute Christians. To declare oneself a Christian is to risk being killed. There is not a single official church in the whole country, and yet Christians are still living there, in secrecy. Number 1. North Korea. North Korea is again at the top of the World Watch list, as it has been since 2002. The mere possession of a Bible is a threat to life, and Christians are seen as enemies of the state. If a Christian is discovered, it will have disastrous consequences for his whole family. Christians are immediately executed or sent to forced labor camps where they live in inhumane conditions and often end up dying. The World Watch List is not just a collection of numbers, it is also a human document reflecting the lives of hundreds of millions of Christians. Its primary purpose is to help us determine the countries where we should focus our support for persecuted Christians. Its second goal is to encourage more individuals, associations, and institutions to take a closer look at what these countries are going through and what their needs are. Its third goal is to help develop the best strategies to help these countries. It has become one of the most important sources of information regarding the persecution of Christians around the world.